So we do this festival in collaboration with the Indian Embassy and a lot of other partners. This is the third year that Cinema Indian has come to Sweden, and we are really honored to have such two amazing, fantastic stars and directors, and what do you call the ones who show us the way to go forward in life. And I think it's going to be a brilliant conversation. I won't take too much of your time. I hope you'll be here during the different days and enjoy the 12 films that we have brought, plus a short film from Madhumira, who's also here, who's come from Kolkata. And in addition to that, I think basically what I will do is a little traditional way of welcoming, if I can.
And our guests, by way of introduction, Aparna Sen is of course a very renowned name in Bengali as well as Indian cinema, and she has excelled both as an actor in film and theatre and as a director of parallel cinema, which is an expression we will come back to later. And you were born in Kolkata, and Aparna's father is or was a film critic and filmmaker, the late Chidananda Dasgupta, and after studies in Kolkata, sorry. Her first film appearance was in Satyajit Ray's Teen Kanya, when you were only 16.
No, I was actually...
according to what I read.
Yeah, actually I was even younger when I started. I was 14 when I started and 15 when it was released.
Wow. And this is something you have in common with Helena as well, which we will also talk more about. But since then, Aparna has directed or has acted in a great number of films. I think I counted almost 70.
I haven't ever counted.
No, but I did. And of course, often in lead roles. And in 1981, Aparna made her debut as a film director with 36 Chowringhee Lane, which won many national and international awards. Since then, Aparna has directed a series of films on a wide variety of subjects, films that have been well acclaimed nationally and internationally. And presently you live in Mumbai and you continue to make films in Hindi and English.
No, Calcutta.
Correction.
Kolkata. Sorry, correction.
Yes.
Calcutta, and I make films mostly in English and Bengali.
English and Bengali. Okay. I'm glad you can make this correction right away so we're not off track instantly.
Yes, I know, when you get sort of information about somebody on the internet, it's actually my fault. I should have been correcting the information that they put out, but I'm just too lazy.
I wish we all could blame Wikipedia, but anyway. Helena Bergström also comes from a theatre and film background, being the daughter of two actors and the granddaughter of another one, legendary Olof Lidegren. So far, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
So,
my father was a director.
Also, yeah. So, an acting career was a natural choice, although I picked up somewhere that you thought about becoming a veterinarian at some stage, but that didn't happen, luckily for us. Her acting debut as a teenager also was in a comedy directed by her father. Work followed at Swedish Television and at the Royal Dramatic Theatre, as well as the Municipal City Theatre of Stockholm. And in films, Helena made her acting breakthrough in a film directed by Carl Gustav Nyquist, the son of Bergman's cinematographer Sven Nyquist, incidentally. And then in a good number of popular films directed by her husband, Colin Nutley. And her debut as a film director was in 2007 in a comedy called Mind the Gap, followed by two other comedies, well, let's say two films, so you don't have to correct me right away, because one of them was an update of Strindberg's Miss Julie. Rather funny too. Her most recent film is a huge success in Swedish cinemas called A Holy Mess, which premiered some months ago and actually has become one of the most popular in Swedish cinema. So that's placing you in the film context. And to start off, since you both were born and bred into this milieu of film and theater, I would like you, first, Aparna, to speak a little bit about how important this background was to you.
Well, I don't think I can overestimate its importance, because my father once said, talking about me, he was supposed to introduce a film of mine, and he said, no, I didn't have anything to do with the film. I'm just the producer of the director. So, of course, we all laughed, but it is very true in more senses than one. He and my mother, actually, they made me what I became later, because both my father and my mother, led a sort of life in the arts, and my father and mother were both founder members of the Calcutta Film Society, along with Satyajit Ray. And so, from a very young age, I was watching films by Bergman. How do you pronounce it? Bergman? Bergman. And then, a lot of Russian films, and a whole lot of, I saw Passion of Joan of Arc, and films like that, and Alexander Nevsky and Battleship Potemkin and all the classics. So we were really brought up on world cinema. As a result, when I went and started acting in films after Satyajit Ray's, the debut with Satyajit Ray, what happened was that I found myself after a while acting in the kind of cinema that I didn't believe in at all. And so there came a time when I said, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And that's when I said, let me try writing a short story. And because of this film background, the short story that I started writing became longer and longer and full of images. And finally, one day I caught myself writing Dissolve. And I said, what is this?
90 minutes later. Full 90 minutes.
Yes. In fact, I used to sometimes speak like that. I remember telling a friend on the phone, describing a dream, and then saying, and then the dream dissolved. So he said, that's very interesting, the use of the word dissolve for a dream. But I guess that's because of my background in cinema, in watching films.
Any of this sounds familiar to you, Helena?
No, I've been growing up within the theater. My parents worked as my father was a boss of a theater in a smaller town outside Stockholm first, and then he started to work in Stockholm, and my mother being an actress all the time. My grandfather was at the Royal Dramatic Theatre, so it's been the theatre kind of theme within our home all the time. So film never was an option for me. So when I went to America when I was 16 as an exchange student, I didn't want to become anything. I was in my father's TV series that he made, so TV maybe was something. And I remember that I was test filming. What do you say? I was casting for it, and he said, "You are the best. You got the part." I don't think I was the best. I think it was really a kind of nepotism. I got that part, and it was quite half bad television series. So I didn't think anything about it. I went to America, and there I had a fantastic teacher in a subject called speech. And she put a monologue in my hands, and I started, there you compete with everything, so I started to compete with the monologue, and they thought I spoke so funny, because I came from Sweden, I was in Mississippi, and it was such a kind of different, weird thing. But she kind of, there I found the theater when I was very far away from my family. And I came home, started school again, and saw an ad in the paper where they looking for teenagers for a television series, and I tried for that, and I got the part, and that's when I kind of started with my own art. And I can say, now my parents I really wanted to be away from them. I tried into the acting school and I got in there, and when I was in acting school, I thought I'm gonna work within the theater, with the theater where my father was the boss in Västerås. Swedish people know. That's my dream, you know. I'm gonna go to Västerås, and then I got a call. They want to test filming for a part that called Friends, a very weird Japanese-Swedish co-production with a Czech director. So I tested for that and I got the part, and then I was kind of hooked. And I started to get film parts, and then I was so kind of into this with film and all of that. So that's how my kind of film world started, and of course now I'm obsessed by it.
And then, considering that you both have this acting background, I mean, you already touched on this first short film, but can you tell us a little bit more about the transition from acting to actually directing?
Actually, to tell you the truth, it was theatre right in the beginning for me as well, because when I was in school, I acted in a play which was based on a novel written by Satyajit Ray's father. It's a very funny, very, very funny novel for children, and I got the main part. I was supposed to be I in it. It was written in the first person, and I was supposed to be that person. So I remember that I was given a little red sari, which was put on as a dhoti. I don't know if you know what a dhoti is. A dhoti is a garment that men wear. It's very like a sari, but it's worn differently. It's worn from the waist downwards. Now, at that age, of course, I didn't question why I would have to be a boy and not a girl. Now, today, I would say why, but the feminist in me had not yet reared its ugly head. So I didn't question. I just went ahead and did it. And I remember that right from the moment that I entered, I stepped onto that stage, until the moment the curtains came down, it was euphoric. It was like a dream. It was really, really wonderful. And the next morning, while I was brushing my teeth, it suddenly occurred to me, and I went straight to my parents and said, I'm going to become an actress when I grow up. And I was all of 8 or 10. So my parents were the most liberal of people. And they immediately said, but of course, we will send you to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London. So it was all decided. Nobody knew who was going to pay for it. But anyway, but it was all decided. My parents were also very young, and I was a child. So, but at 13, it struck me, look, if I go to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, I will learn the British way of acting. And how will I get any roles there? I will have to unlearn everything that I learned. So back I went to my parents and said, no, it's not a good idea. I don't think I should go there. They thought about it and they said, you're absolutely right. yes, she's quite right. No, I'm going to call up Utpal Dutt. Utpal Dutt and Shobha Sen were huge in the theatre of the time. They were very leftist, and they did very sort of left-leaning plays and so on. But they were very good. And so his wife was called up, and she said, as soon as she's finished her school, let her come and join us. But before I could do that, I got this offer from Satyajit Ray, and I acted as the village tomboy in this film called Samapti, which is, it was released abroad as Two Daughters, 2 short films, 2 short fiction films. And I did that, and that got me a lot of attention. I was suddenly featured in Punch as a cartoon, and of course I was very young, so what struck me was that, my God, why is my nose so big? That was what upset me, and people kept saying, but you've been featured in Punch. I said, so? I don't think that I really knew anything about it at that time. But anyway, it got me a lot of parts which my parents said, no, let her finish school. And I finished school, I started acting in the play. I acted in this play as a Jewish girl. It was called Ruth Mamluk. and in Germany of Hitler's time, and I loved it. I loved it, and finally, when I made my foray into commercial cinema, that's when I found that it was a completely different ball game, because all they wanted me to do was look nice. That's all they wanted, and so
I have a pretty face.
Yes, I wanted to act, and they kept saying, "Oh, your profile isn't so good. This angle is not so good. Your walk is not good. And I got more and more insecure, and I ended up by becoming a bad actress. Really, I ended up becoming a bad actress. I was just constantly flirting with the audience and trying to see if the right profile was there, that kind of thing. So you can't act when you do that. It was much later, after I started directing and writing my own screenplays, I wrote all my own screenplays, that I really started acting, because I had a lot of acting experience. I did a whole lot of films, and with some big directors also. But I acted in a film called, the English name I'll tell you, The House of Memories, where I acted as one of the protagonists, an elderly lady. That's when I found that, I was acting. So, but I also did there was a spate of a very bad professional theatre that I did, because I needed to earn the money. You know how it is, sometimes you have to do these things. So I did that too. But all the time I kept directing my films. Because I did that because you always need a sort of alternative way of earning money, so that you don't have to compromise in the thing that you're most interested in. I wanted to make films, I wanted to make good films, and I didn't want to compromise there. So I compromised in the acting area, which was not as important to me.
Now that we've mentioned Satyajit Ray several times here in the conversation, that's the Ingmar Bergman of India, and you also work with Mrinal Sen,
Yes.
and these are, the great elephants of Indian cinema. So,
Yeah.
how educational was that in your, in retrospect, when you had a directing career of your own?
Yeah, you see, what happens is they kind of get into your bloodstream. That's what happens. You're not aware that you're actually imbibing so much, but I think Ray's attention to detail, and also the structuring of his screenplays. I think those were the two things that I imbibed most. Because when I started directing 36 Chaurangi Lane, I found that I was very involved with the production design, and I kept telling the production designer that I think this is an old maid's apartment, and she is very tidy, but it's very shabby. And how did we weathered the chairs and so on, and we weathered it in the way that she would. I said, I'm sure that she sits on this chair, and when the pen is not working, she sort of jerks it, and drops of ink keep falling. So I was trying to figure out what her habits were, and weather the apartment accordingly. So that kind of thing. I really put a lot of attention to detail, like what her hot water bag cover would be like. That kind of, I went into absolutely great detail about, and I think that helped, that showed up, because that made the character come alive, because when you get a very detailed environment for the character, then somehow the character becomes more alive to you. I think that was very important, because Ray was a master at that, I have to tell you. Ray could take a close-up shot, say in Opu Shamchar of Opu, and by a shot of the main character in a mirror, and he's shaving, and the kind of things he's using, the blade, the cup that he keeps his hot water in, whatever is being reflected in the mirror, all of it in that one shot gives you the entire information about the economic background of the character, you know. So the weathering of the mirror, a little crack, some smudge marks, you know, that there is no woman in his life, all that, because then it would be a little more tidy, all that in one shot, enormous amount of information. And that economy is something that I really wanted to emulate. The economy of imparting a lot of information in a small amount of time is I think something that Ray was wonderful at.
Mm. I think we could actually take a look at, we have a clip from that first film of yours.
Of 36-year-old Elaine.
Exactly. And
well, it's just being restored, so I don't know what it's going to be like. I hope the...
Well, I think it's a great scene. It's a dream sequence, dissolve and all. And it's a very, I think, a visually arresting klipp that we will see.
Okay.
Så om vi tar och tittar på det klippet nu.
Miss Stoneham, who is an old maid, is a school teacher. She's Anglo-Indian. She has, mixed parentage. And Anglo-Indians have been living in India for a long time, and they were very sort of considered themselves very privileged while the British were still ruling India. But after the British left, they found that they had nowhere really to go, because they were not accepted by the British and they were not accepted by mainstream India either. So they kind of found themselves at a loss. And some of these school teachers, Anglo-Indian school teachers, we were taught by. And I always found them very warm and endearing, and they loved us. They were not necessarily good teachers. Miss Stoneham in the film teaches Shakespeare, but she's not a very good teacher, you know. So children are bored in her class and they read comic books and, they doodle and they talk. But she teaches on in a kind of monotone, droning through her lessons. The film, by the way, is in color. It was only the dream sequence that was in black and white. And Miss Stoneham meets on one Christmas morning, she meets a student of hers and this student's boyfriend. And she sees this young couple and they brighten up her day very much. They go and get her pastries and they chat and so on. And then the young man, unknown to Miss Stoneham, has the bright idea of using Miss Stoneham's apartment as a love nest, because they don't have anywhere where they can be intimate and for a little while. So they are left in this apartment alone. Miss Stoneham agrees, and because the boyfriend says, he's an author and he writes, and he actually did write a little bit. But there's nowhere that he can write. He never gets any peace in his house, which is a joint family and all of that. And Miss Stoneham falls for this whole thing, and she agrees. But she finds it all very charming, this young couple, coming to her house, suddenly brightening up her life, and this young man who sort of is fond of making little jokes and pulling her leg. She finds that very charming, and he flirts with her in a very sweet way. And when they leave, she giggles to herself as she's going to bed with a hot water bottle, and as she kind of sinks into sleep, this is the dream that she has, that she's a little girl and her boyfriend Davy, who had been mentioned during the conversation that day and whose photograph had been seen when she was showing them her albums. So he has been seen, and she said he's a family friend, but actually he was her boyfriend. And he died, he was killed. He was in the war, he was in the Navy, and he was killed. So when she has this dream, this student, Nandita and Samarish, the girl in the sari and the dot, she and her boyfriend are there. There are other people also, her brother is there. Then she herself is there as an aged woman, in which she is. But she dreams that she is a little girl and she's going into this house, and the door opens out onto the sea, which is actually a graveyard. And this sort of thing. So that's the context.
So it's a great story, and I really like this clip, and it somehow illustrates to me that you've seen a lot of world cinema, because I mean it evokes some other directors.
Yes, perhaps, you know,
unmentioned.
it's possible, you know, that shades of directors that I've liked have come into it. Well, not any one particular director, but you know, a kind of certain style of filmmaking which I possibly unconsciously imbibed.
And I'm thinking also that in most of your films, or those I've seen, women are more often than not, or almost always, the protagonists, and you have a natural focus on women. And so do you, Helena, and in your films. So my question would be, do you as women directors feel that there is a void to be filled here with this kind of stories, or is it just a natural, unpremeditated choice you make? Helena, what do you say?
It was a very conscious decision I made when I made my first film, that I wanted it to be two strong young girls that speak to one another without talking about a boy, or I was kind of...
That's the definition of the Bechdel test.
Yes, and I didn't even know that then, but that was a kind of feeling inside me that I remembered. So I done films with my husband through the years, and I done other films that also with not my husband, but I done quite a lot of films, and with Colin, my husband, he thinks that women are more interesting than men. So he's
good for him.
Yeah, he's usually having very strong, not just me, but other strong women. But I felt it very strongly also because I work very kind of, I go back and forth between films, and I work within the theater as well. And I felt very strongly there about that it lacks really this, women that are strong, and that I can feel that my daughter should look at that and kind of get inspired by. So when it was actually that I was reading a film that they wanted me to play the female lead, and it was about an abused woman, and I felt if I do this, I know I would. This is a kind of prize role. Misunderstand me right when I say it. It felt like this is. Yeah, it's a good part, but what do you want to tell with this story? And I felt that it was really from a male eye when the woman just became a victim, and it was so I remember so well, and I rang my friend and I said, now I had it actually. Let's write something together, and we actually wrote together my first film. That was I'm very much into who am I approaching. Who do I want to reach as an audience? That's within theater, and that's within films. And here was my daughter was my main target. So it was about two girls trying to become policemen, and one that had a Turkish background, and one that had, my friend that I wrote with had a Turkish background, and it was really, we were writing about ourselves trying into the acting school. But now we made it instead to a fantasy story about two girls into the police school. So that was my kind of start within. So all the time has been an aim to, even, for example, the film I'm working with now, I have a boy in the lead. It's the first time actually I had a boy in the lead, or what do you say, a man, not a woman in the lead part. But still, of course, I think it is very, if I'm a woman, I'm now 52 years old, and it's so important that I feel that my views, that I'm not kind of, because it's so easy that you should be in a certain way, that you go your own way, then it would be a kind of with a woman's heart, you can say. So that is, even though it's about whatever, if I'm having this thought as a woman, it will be with a woman's point of view. And that I think is so important, that when female directors is that because it's still, it is a very, very male-driven business, and it's we are used to having stories that is in a certain way. So, so I think it's so important that as a female director that you really go your own way with your own experience and telling your story through your heart and hopefully to an audience that can, that's what it's my aim.
And for you, Aparna, I mean, the Indian film industry is colossal. And how do you situate yourself there as a
Well, I would
woman
first,
director?
first like to say that the Indian film industry is indeed colossal, but you know, for most people who live outside India, Indian, and even to people who live in India, Indian film industry means Bollywood. It is not. I want to stress this very, very emphatically, that there are many films from many regions which are wonderful and which have won awards internationally, gone to film festivals and seen and liked by many people that are not from Bollywood. This is important because even when I once went to MIT to teach a class or two on cinema, and there was a girl there, and she said, she was enjoying the class, and she said, may I go a little early because I have to go to a fancy dress party. So I said, all right, what are you going as in at the fancy dress party? And she said, oh, I'm going in Indian dress. So I said, but there's no one Indian dress. You know, just as there's no one Indian music, no one Indian dance. India is a huge country with so much variety and so much diversity, which in fact makes up its essence.
Hence the parallel
yes.
cinema concept?
Well, parallel cinema also wanted to make films about real people, you know.
Like the neo-realist?
Yes, I think it was very, very deeply influenced by neorealism. The Nouvelle Vague, in fact. Satyajit Ray, when he made his first film, Pothe Panchali, he was deeply influenced by Bicycle Thieves, you know, by Desika. Now, this was there. If you talk about me, I was already a product of these thinkers. I mean, Satyajit Ray and Mrinal Sen and Ritik Ghatak and all these people, their films I'd seen, I'd watched world cinema. So, I was not making parallel cinema to prove anything, really. In fact, I have to say that contrary to what you said just now, Helena, I have never done a film in a premeditated way. It always has come instinctually from inside, kind of, it's kind of emerged. Something moves me, and then I don't do anything about it, and it just stays inside me and kind of grows and grows and grows. And then I start seeing a lot of images, and my mind becomes completely crowded with images. And then when it comes to a stage when I know that a film just wants to be made, and that's when I start writing. And often a film has come to me not from a story but from an image, you know. So it's never been premeditated. And the school teacher in 36 Chaurangi Lane could well have been a man. It's just that I, being a woman, as you just said, you know, a woman's point of view, I had gone to an all-girls school. And I didn't know what a boys' school was like. I didn't know what little boys did, you know, when they wanted to play truant. I didn't know what little boys did when they were bored in class. What kind of games they played or what kind of jokes they cracked. I didn't know any of this. Whereas I knew very well exactly what girls did. So I did this. I made this film with a school teacher who was a woman. I also know that, well, I know meaning it's a kind of instinctive knowledge, intuitively. I know that a man at the end would have broken, he would have broken down if he had been betrayed, like Miss Stoneham was betrayed by her student and the boyfriend. But Miss Stoneham, though she's deeply hurt, she doesn't break down. She had considered going away to Australia where her niece was, but then she says, how can you leave your own country? And she doesn't go. Instead, she walks about on the street. She had brought the story is that she'd taken a Christmas cake for them. And they had told her that they were going to be out of town and they were not going to be there because they didn't want her to come to their party. And she came, she said, she thought she was going to just leave the cake as a surprise for them. And she comes and then there's this party going on and she watches it through the glass, you know. And she realizes that she's really not needed in their lives, and she takes this cake and she goes and she takes a taxi and she goes to Victoria Memorial, which is a very big place, you know, a memorial to Queen Victoria in the middle of the town. And there she sits for a while and then a dog comes sniffing at the cake. And then she starts reciting Shakespeare. And I think this is the first time that she really understands and recites Shakespeare, not as a kind of droning monotone. She, in fact, recites from King Lear, you know. So she walks down reciting from King Lear with the dog following her. That's how the film ends. Now, Miss Stoneham, I meant her to go away to Australia, but, you know, she took on a life of her own and she just wouldn't go. I couldn't make her. I was trying to write that she went away, but it just wouldn't write itself. I mean, I was not able to do it because she had become a character for me, you know. She had become a real character for me.
She took on a life on her own.
She took on a life of her own. In fact, you know, a lot of people said that right at the end, you know, we have her looking through the glass and it's all misty. And then we go into the party and then we come out, we find that she's not there. Now, including my chief assistant, he said, aren't you going to take a close-up of Miss Stoneham's here? So I said, no, and this was my first film. He said, take a close-up and throw it out if necessary during the editing. I said, no, but, you know, I can't take a close-up. Why? I said, because I don't know what she would be feeling. I mean, I can try to imagine, but you've written the character. I said, yes, I've written the character. But you know, this is very invasive. I feel as if I'm intruding upon her privacy, her most private thoughts, when she's most hurt. And I can't do that. And I don't think Jennifer would be able to act it as well as the audience would be able to imagine it. You know? So that is the kind of way that I've made films all this time. It's been a very, very intuitive process.
So, I mean, obviously social issues and like religious conflicts, etc., they're always there as a backdrop to your stories, and I want to speak more about that. But that also happens, I think, in your most recent film, A Holy Mess. There is a social issue as a backdrop there, or actually the motor of the whole story. Can you tell us a bit about that? Before we see the clip of your film?
Yeah, I can say I did. Before this film, I made Miss Julie as a film. I directed it in the theater and found it very that it really worked on young people, and I felt very strongly because of the school. I'm working, you see, in a very different way because of the schools today in Sweden. Is that many young people are feeling very stressed, and I think because of the internet and everything, but also because of how the society is. And I know they have to read Strindberg, and I thought if I can get, and it's so little time with the teachers, and it's just, I want to say how how my films come out, why I feel, I want to make this film. I felt they need to read Strindberg. If I can get a film into the schoolroom, so the teacher can show the film and talk about what the film is about, and talk about it's about a girl feeling very badly, it's about men and women, all these kind of deep issues for a person to be a person. If a teacher can then get the kids to kind of connect, and maybe one teacher will find one child that don't feel very well because them I succeeded. So that was my aim to make Miss Julie as a film. My aim for the next one was how do you reach an audience? And I want to tell very important things. I want to tell about about equality. I want to talk about how how important it is to be that we accept each other as different people, whatever sexuality you belong to, wherever, what country you come from, everything. Diversity. That's my kind of aim for the film. And I've been working with some comedy writers in other things, and they came up with this story about a gay couple that wanted to have a child with their best friend, and they inviting these two different their families into their new home, and on Christmas Day, because they think that on Christmas Day everyone is going to be nice. Because it's the nice day of the year, where everything is calm. We're going to tell this great story that Jesus child is going to be born soon.
So let's see how nice that
No, I want to tell about this clip.
Yeah, sorry.
I want to tell about this clip. My kind of, and I'm telling it with a comedy. And my experiment in this film was to go from high comedy, almost farce, into depth. How do you kind of work with that? And I'm working here with two, you can say Maria's done very many, you can say dark parts, the woman here, but Robert is one of our most famous comedy actors. And I really wanted to push them on the edge, to start with real slapstick and go down into the depth. And to talk about very important things in a kind of so that's the experience with this scene, and I think that it's been fantastic to work with this actor. What you now when it's been running in the cinema, you feel very strongly with the audience contact you had, and also the figures of the film, that it touched people and they laugh, and so it actually, my aim here was kind of, I feel when you sit in the audience, they get what I want to tell, and that is my kind of aim of making films. Who am I? What am I want to tell? Who do I want to? I'm within the theatre as well. I have very kind of strong. I'm doing now a play at the Royal Dramatic Theatre. There is outrageous farce that I've never done in my life, with a fantastic director, and I also have an aim doing that. It's so I feel all the time with everything I do, and hopefully I can continue doing that through my life. It's to what do I want to tell now, and what kind of drawing, how will I draw this story? I can draw it with laughter, or I can be very serious, or whatever. That's my kind of lust and dream of the continuation of my filmmaking.
I'd like also to let the audience in, but before that, I just would like to talk to you about, when we read about the situation for women in India today, that's no fun story. And I mean, obviously this is a huge issue, and you've dealt with, in one of your films, 15 Park Avenue, there is a very sinister love story, but that really deals with mental illness, and a film about a girl being traumatized by gang rape, really.
Yes, but it's also because the condition of schizophrenia, it fascinated me because I have a relative, very close relative, who has chronic schizophrenia, and maybe the film is a kind of tribute to her. When I wrote it, I wasn't thinking of that. As I said, it came from within naturally, and what I was fascinated with was actually the nature of reality, which differs from individual to individual. What you perceive is just a little different from the way I perceive, a little different from what Helena would perceive, but with a schizophrenic patient, it is very widely different, and so much so that we say this is not true, you imagined it. Now, if someone were to tell me that you were not sitting there with Jannike and Helena with this talk, you imagined it. How would I feel? For the person, it's as real as this is to me. So is that then the tyranny of the majority? That is the kind of thing that just was going through my mind. And until this story emerged, and I made it, it's also something that had bothered me for a long time, that our films, most of our Indian films, never have challenged people in them. people who are not so-called, quote unquote normal, as if they are not citizens of this world, as if they're not citizens of India, as if they're, as if they're invisible. I went to the Institute of Cerebral Palsy and I came across a lot of these people, and I think that was one conscious decision that I took, that I will try to keep in my films at least one person, even if it's not the central figure, even one person, but should be there, because when we see people around us in cinema, they're always all normal people. So this is something that had struck me, and this is something that I deliberately wanted to do. But this film, of course, didn't come out of that. Now, there was a gang rape, yes, because often a schizophrenia can be triggered off by something. Of course, a person has to be susceptible anyway. She has to have a predilection for schizophrenia, but it can be triggered off by an incident also. So, coming to the gang rape, you are trying to put it in the context of what is actually happening in India and in my part of the country. Well, I can tell you that, of course, it's true that is happening, but it is not the whole truth. India is a very strange country because it exists in many historical time frames at once, at the same time. Simultaneously, there are people whose thought process, mental makeup could be something from feudal times, something from the 17th century, and there are people that I know, many of my friends, who are in the 21st century or even later. So India is made up of all these people. There are wonderful women doing wonderful work who are very exciting and who are holding their own, lawyers who are fighting for women, social activists who are fighting for women and other causes, and there are women whose lives are not safe, who are being attacked. That is also true. And constantly there is an effort that is on in India, through television, through all, even mainstream actors are throwing themselves into this and, illustrating what you should do, whether you should use pepper sprays and so on. Actually, it is a law and order problem, but it is very, very difficult to solve this problem in a country as big as ours. So while I condemn it, I would just like to say that it is not the only truth about women in India.